I'm a journalist. I think my question has got to do with your business model. But just a caveat, I want this to work. I believe in your premise, but I'm slightly concerned by your very staunch kind of no advertising position. I see a lot of potential for you guys to even monetize your events. You know, I think to create a community, you need to kind of realize that people value things only when they seem to pay for it. Yeah, so I just want to get, my question is basically to moving ahead. I know you guys is just starting out, it's pilot and there's only 8 of you, there's only so much you can do. But moving ahead, is there some sort of kind of incremental business plan that you guys have to create more sources of revenue so that you guys are self-sustainable and are able to, you know, grow that whole readership and also maybe some in terms of content partnerships, like what are your global plans, so to speak, to kind of get more eyeballs onto the site? Thanks.
PG, do you want to share about our, yeah, Brett?
Thanks, Clement. It's a good question and one I've gotten a lot. So there's several important points here. The first is that when it comes to advertising, right, the reader is not the customer. The advertiser is the customer. The reader is the product. Advertising commoditizes the users of the website. And it means that the people who pay our bills are not the people who truly care about our content. All they want is people coming through our website. So that in itself is something, you know, I disagree with, but it also breaks this fundamental link between us and our members in terms of our accountability. Right? We are no longer accountable to our members if they are not the ones paying us. We are accountable to the advertisers. And in the bigger picture, okay, you know, so losing sight of our membership is in itself, you know, also enough of a deal breaker that I'll forget this. But the third thing to remember is that's how governments shut down media that is unfriendly to them in Southeast Asia, by depriving them of advertising revenue. And you need look no further than the Malaysian Insider, because the reason why they shut down is not because there was no support. It's because once access to their website was blocked, they no longer could deliver on their promises to advertisers, and therefore the money stopped coming in. Whereas if their revenue, if like for us, you know, it was fully dependent on the readers, even if the website is blocked, we would have time then to find a new way to get it up, move to a different site, you know, find new ways to disseminate information, convert entirely to a WhatsApp-driven site, something like that, right? There is room and scope for freedom when you have, you know, when it's very clear who you're responsible to, and when those people are behind you all the way. So that, you know, that in a nutshell is why we will never consider advertising. But it seems pie in the sky, but it's not, because there are already websites, news websites around the world which follow this model. It may seem like, we may seem like a pioneer, we may seem crazy, but it's actually not. There are sites in Europe and in the US which follow this model, and it's worked very, very well for them. So the way we have thought very carefully about it is that we never expand further than our costs, than our income, than our income. So if you scroll up here to our subscription page, right here, and I talked about membership, okay. We need 3,500 members, that's it. 3,500 members to be able to launch and start a very limited publishing schedule and pay our 6 part-time staff and do, you know, about 2 articles a week and a third piece, whether it's a comic, a video, something else a week, right? Very limited. And then if we go up to 5,500, that's a kind of break-even point for the absolute minimum viable product. At that level, that is the absolute minimum that we believe. We're putting out a good product every working day, and that we are paying everyone a fair wage, and that we are basically sustainable at a really shoestring level. And then we go up, 7,500, that's when it gets sustainable. That's when we can start thinking about, hey, maybe some people can become full-time. Maybe we can expand, have more articles, different ways of publishing. And at this level, it's really sustainable. But the magic level for us is 12,000. At that level, everyone's full-time. And not only that, but we can start thinking about expanding from our 2 target markets of Singapore and KL. We're starting with 2 target markets into our 3rd target market, which is Jakarta. So, and then of course, we'll already have an Indonesian editor, but the real prize is the 300 million people in Southeast Asia who speak some form of Malay, right? If you want to survive as a publisher, I believe that's where the future lies. And that's where the most important and interesting stories for Singapore lie as well. So that's the direction we're heading. So we have a plan, a very long and detailed plan, which I'm happy to talk about further. But all of it is here. If you scroll further up and down this page, you'll see a lot more about how our cost breakdown, what we're trying to do. And of course, it's very important to us. Everyone gets paid a fair wage. Thanks.
Anyone else? Anyone else? While we're waiting, I just want to add on to what PJ said, just to explain it. Our target markets, when he mentioned target markets, we're starting out with Singapore, KL, well, pretty obvious because of limited resources, and later on to Jakarta, but that's separate from our coverage. Our coverage is Southeast Asian-wide. So when we say target market, we're talking about where the bulk of our members, we believe, will start off coming from first. Okay. Yes?
Thanks.
Mike's working.
My name is Nathan, I'm from Duke University. I'm wondering if you can talk more about your expansion plans and how you might collaborate with people in the rest of Southeast Asia, considering things like the closure of the Cambodian Daily recently, how you might be able to work with some of those people who are already involved in a somewhat similar mission.
Okay, so I'll say something first, and then I'll let the rest of my colleagues here add on. How we work when it comes to content generation, at least for the journalism side, is we have gotten in touch. We have a long list, actually, of correspondents from around the region. Some people that I've come across in the 18 years that I've been working in the wires. Some are contacts from Kirsten, from the rest of colleagues, names that have been passed on to us. People whose work we have read, whose work ethic we are very much aligned to ours. And the plan really is to get these writers on the ground, to pitch stories to us on a regular basis. And that's basically what you see for the stories. Now your question of, what was the...
Collaborations with other like-minded organizations.
Right, yes, sorry. So at a later stage of the site, initial discussions are already underway, at least in Kuala Lumpur, to link up with research houses, with government bodies, in fact, because there's a wealth of information that's there. And for the same reasons that Kirsten shared earlier, a lot of it's not coming out into the public because perhaps the form of it is a little bit too complicated, it's a little bit too technical, but there's so much information to be shared, especially with universities, research houses. We, again, resources at this point is limited, but we have already in mind institutions in Singapore, in KL for sure, where I'm from, that have expressed keen interest to work with us. So when we say work with us, specifically it is providing us access to their research, providing us access to events that they are holding, and therefore giving us a chance not only to share these events to our members, but to draw from the information and facts that come out from these reports and findings and present it to our members. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that?
For our content, we're also working on a model that people who write for us are freelancers, so they're all open to pitch. We're easily contactable, can find our emails, and they're all welcome to pitch. So for example, with the Cambodia daily shutdown, if any of those journalists had stories that they were interested to pitch to us, that's definitely something we would be open with. And you know, once we get to know people more, we work more regularly, then that's how we see the relationships developing.
I'd like to add also that earlier I mentioned that when TMI, when the Malaysian Insider was shut down, 61 colleagues and myself found ourselves jobless. Well, I'm happy to say that that wasn't a situation that lasted very long. Okay, very soon after, you know, the writers, while waiting for the version 2 of the Malaysian Insider to be launched, they could find work with organizations that were quite similar to ours, that are always looking out for good writers. And likewise, we hope to do that as well. In fact, I've just managed to get the details of one of the leading editors from Cambodia, and we're going to get in touch very soon to see how we can work with them, how we can support them, most importantly. I think one aspect of journalism in this region that we need to promote more is giving journalists jobs, you know, and being able to pay them fairly. Any freelancer here will be able to attest to how difficult it is to be remunerated fairly for your work, right? And that's something that we want to be very transparent about in our payment structures. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for the question. I think there's a gentleman here, yeah.
Thanks, my name is Casey Chiu. Thanks, PJ, for explaining the rationale for the non-advertising, which I think is very compelling or persuasive. Wikipedia does not advertise, does it? I mean, I'm not certain, but Wikipedia is also supported by donations or crowdfunding. Democracy Now! In the US, is also does not take advertising, and it has survived for many years. I mean, it's not just survived; it's done very well. My question is, in your site, besides the subscriptions, is there a possibility of people wanting to support to give much more than what you're asking for, your $500 US a year? I mean, someone might want to write you a big check, and you should therefore allow for that because you want to try and get as much as you can. Right. So that was my question.
We're happy to take money from anyone, honestly, as long as they respect our values. And most importantly, academic freedom and editorial independence. So if they respect that, we'll work with anyone, right? The truth is, is out there, and there are so many different ways to get it. Very happy to collaborate with anyone who is willing to collaborate with us. And also, if you have $1 million, please do. But I just want to point out. It may confuse you why members and not money is our target, and that's because we see this very much as a movement, right? That we need all of you to work with us. I talked about co-creation earlier, and that's very much at the core of what we're trying to do. So it's not a passive one-way thing. You don't simply receive the information. We really want people to be a part of this, to be involved. We'll have events where you can meet and discuss. We'll have our open editorial meetings, and at the end of the day, with lots and lots of money, there's still only so much we can do, right? The way that we've planned things out, the goals that we have, the values that we have, giving us huge amounts of money does not fundamentally change our ability to influence the world. It does not change our ability to write, create compelling content and spread it out. Only a massive membership, right? Every new member increases this movement greatly, and only with more and more members are we then able to expand the reach of the information that we're putting out there. That's why members are so much more important to us. than money. And that's why this is a member-driven movement. And all our benchmarks, our metrics are member numbers, not money.
But we still need some money, so...
Yes, we won't turn down any money, of course.
Hi. So, I mean, to add on to what PJ mentions about it being member-driven, I think maybe I can highlight a bit about the conversations that we've been having about how New Naratif will be developed further after it launches live, which is we are intending to have forum pages where a certain theme is put out, and then we would be inviting op-eds or feature articles that are going to be discussed. Alongside that, we would actually then have a hosted comment thread that is not unlike a Reddit Ask Me Anything thread or a Quora kind of function where people are flared as to what expert that they are in. So we find that this has already been proven on the internet that you can have very depthful conversations and where you can learn quite a lot or exchange very contrarian points, but that are not in a way that is destructive. It is constructive rather than destructive. It can happen, and we would like to see that happening on New Naratif as well. But also, I think New Naratif, at least maybe to share a little bit about how me and Aoife got into the picture here anyway, it is a very people-centric environment that New Naratif as a team has. How I got into the picture here with Aoife is basically Kirsten putting up on Facebook like an open call, like hey, I'm working on a project with PJ and Sunny, and I was like, hey, those two names sound familiar, and I think that might be something that might be quite interesting, and it's probably the same reason why you all are here attending to us this afternoon. So, and with that, and me and Kirsten have worked briefly once on a project with Aware, but aside from that, we don't really have that much of a close experience. So, but it is an environment of trust and openness to people pitching in new ideas and what they can contribute. And it's really just been rolling off that since, to be honest. So that is also, I think, a vibe that will continue beyond the crowdfunding phase. Yeah.
Thanks, Easy. So we'll take, do we have time for 3 more? Okay, we'll take 3 more questions. Sorry, I think somebody's got a mic there already. Oh, here, sorry. Yes.
Hi, I'm Alicia from South Korea. I'm a student at Yale in US. And I was quite surprised to hear from you guys that you guys would be more concentrated on soft news, so very long length and very much more slow-paced than hard news, which is more quick and much concentrated on reporting. And I think, especially for a paid membership, I think for a lot of journalism companies, the most attractive feature is the quick pace reporting of the happenings in the world. So I was wondering, is that an element that you guys are thinking about, or is that in the plan of New Naratif?
Thank you for that question, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. So we're going to take all the questions first, and then we'll answer them, just so that we can try to save a bit of time. But I'll definitely get back to you with that. Second question?
Okay. Hi, my name is Khalil Stoltz. I'm a writer for the Conflict Comment magazine in the USA, and I had a question. Most of you guys on the stage, you've talked about your experiences with government censorship, and I was specifically hoping you could maybe talk about if you've thought about any issues that might arise with your new media platform, if perhaps there might be things like censorship, if there might be things like people accusing you of fake news. I was wondering, because that's certainly a problem many independent journalists in the United States and in the West in general, as all around the world, they've faced in the last few months. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vikram. So since you specifically peg yourself to cover the gaps left by established sources of media or establishment media, will you be trying to do what they do and replicate it, or will it just be looking for the gaps in existing reporting and filling those corners? So will the tone of your reporting necessarily be anti-establishment because you're trying to balance out the narrative, or will you try to do what they're doing but better?
Hi, my name is Terrence. I really believe in what you guys are doing. I do a lot of work in Southeast Asia. I work in ASEAN, I work with children, I work with disaster relief, and I use puppets. So what you do is, I think, is the right thing to do. But I want to ask about, I believe in the transparency that you're trying to create. I want to help, I want to provide material, but at the same time, I'm worried that what I say and what I do, or what I help to put out there in my name, will also get into trouble with, especially if I'm working with Indonesian governments, because I work with the ASEAN Secretariat and the Foundation as well. So I would like to know if there's some way to protect the identity of those who want to provide material for you. Thanks.
I think we can take one more.
Okay, so thanks. Okay, so my name is Shuto, and I guess my question is, a very basic one. Can you define Southeast Asia? And given that Southeast Asia is not actually a very coherent whole right now, do you see yourself as spreading yourself too far? Or do you hope by having this you can make Southeast Asia a bit more coherent?
Thanks for the questions, guys. We'll just take them. So repeat the questions. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the first question. If I summarize it correctly, hard news versus long form. That's your question. Why are we choosing for the latter? Well, my short answer to that is we've got some excellent news sites already out there that's covering the daily news that have the resources. We're talking about a newsroom of at least 20, 30 people at least to be able to be a successful website that is going to give you breaking news every minute that it happens. Something happens at 9 a.m. and 9:01 a.m. you'll see it up on the site. You need to have a very big integrated team for that. I guess the practical answer to that is we don't have that team. And more importantly, there's already really good sites out there that provide that. And we see no need to compete with them. Work with them, work on what they are reporting, and we invite you to take a step back with us to ask the question, so what? Right? That's the question that I love to ask every time I read something. So what? What is the relevance of this to me, to the region, to my country? And we hope to answer those questions. Anybody else want to talk about that?
I think also with the hard news, fast writes and things like that, you don't get the chance to really bring that context and that depth. And I know that in my own experience as a freelancer writing for foreign wires, foreign publications, there's often the sense of, okay, I found that story, I was really fast, I was within the hour, but I'm dissatisfied because I don't feel like I've actually provided readers with a full picture of what's actually happening, or what I've actually seen, why things are like this. So not just, for example, if we want to look at, an event in Malaysia, it's not enough to, the hard news often is just this event has happened. But what we're interested in is, this event has happened, why, what were the forces that led to this kind of thing? Why do people feel the way that they do about this event? And I think that takes time, and the long form is necessary.
Okay, so second question, I hope that answered your question, but thank you for that. Second question, if I could just summarize it, is why would our content not be fake news? Is that right?
No.
Did I oversimplify that? Yeah, okay.
I was asking about...
Okay, well, PG will answer that.
I think it comes back to trust, right? First of all, as I mentioned, our audience is our members, and they will have all these opportunities to look us in the eye and query us about what we're doing. Fake news is untrustworthy and partly, I mean, a big reason for that is because its provenance is unknown. Right?
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to say you guys are fake news. I'm saying, how do you deal with it? Because the unfortunate truth is that, I come from Trump's America, and people will often tell, news outlets, you are fake news because you report news or you report stories that are inimical to their political agendas. And how would you deal with that if that comes to you? I'm so sorry if I was very dolphin with my question.
No. I think I understood your question. I just want to re-emphasize this relationship of our members, right? Because even if the mainstream media and big business or governments who dislike us come after us and say, you're fake news, they can't actually do anything about us because we're supported by our members. And I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but we have no legal presence in Southeast Asia, so we can't be shut down. All our transactions, right, are done over the internet. All of our payments are done over the internet. So you can't shut us down without shutting down the internet or financial flows. We are a UK registered company. Our head office is in the UK, and all our staff are employed from there. So in terms of being, that's that level of attack, I guess. We hope that we have set up a structure which is generally going to be pretty sound, right? So. Which I think also the other gentleman's question, are we anti-establishment? No, absolutely not. I think what we are is focused on the evidence. And we focus on telling evidence-based stories, and we will always tell stories that help you shed light on the truth. And if the establishment is happy with that, then that's fine. If they're not happy with that, there's nothing we can do. But I believe the truth will eventually get out, no matter what. Even though it takes some time to get out there. But we will always have evidence to back up the things we say. So, kind of related to both your questions there. Yeah, thanks.
I would add that, for the art section, we have no particular point of view. As long as the storytelling is good, and that the arguments are persuasive, we were very happy to showcase any stories. An example I would give is sometime this year, an Indonesian cartoonist for Marvel Comics called Aryan Syed drew some controversial images in his comic for Marvel and ended up being fired for it. And he's kind of kept a very low profile since, and we actually invited him to tell this version of the story, even though it's probably come from a very religious, right-wing kind of perspective. We believe that if he was willing to engage us, willing to tell the story from his point of view, in a well-argued way, we'd be very happy to feature him. Unfortunately, he never did respond to our request, but I think that's just one example of how, I think as a website, we're not kind of leaning towards one political viewpoint or another. It's more about evidence and good storytelling.
Thanks, PJ and Sunny. So just before the fourth question, I'd like to just add that prior to meeting up with PJ and having this discussion going, I had no inkling whatsoever. They're probably the only person in the room here today who had never heard of PJ, Kirsten, and Sunny. Right? I had no idea what their backgrounds were. I was a little shocked after I found out. If I had known earlier, I may not actually be here today. So I'm a journalist. I'm not an activist. Okay? And I think my colleagues have put it well. I think that a good journalism platform has to be a fair platform for all views. And linking that to one of our earlier questions, some of the partnerships that I hope to build up in the coming months are with government bodies. All right? There's again a wealth of information from all sides. So we hope that our content will prove fairness. As Kirsten said, of course, everybody comes with a tainted view, whether or not you want to admit it. We just hope to be able to showcase the differing views that are backed up by evidence, by facts. The next question is from Darren about what mechanisms do we have in place to protect the identity of our contributors, especially when it comes to very sensitive topics. We have discussed this actually in one of our earlier editorial meetings. Now, as a rule, we we would like all our writers to obviously have their names, their bylines will reflect their actual identities. But for certain cases, we will have pseudonyms. But New Naratif will have full information of the provider of information. Right? So that's also to protect us, to ensure that what we are running is backed by fact. But for purpose of safety and security, we have discussed the possibility of using pseudonyms. Okay, so I hope, but you should come and speak to us after this. And last question, how do we define Southeast Asia? Is that right?
Thank you, PJ.
I think for the purposes of this website, we're looking at the 11 countries of Southeast Asia, right? The 10 of ASEAN and East Timor. But of course, Southeast Asia is it's an artificial construct, an artificial creation. If you click through to the preview and you read my article about how we chose the name, the first name I wanted was Imagine Community, because Southeast Asia is very much an imagined community. But yes, that's one of the things I would love to highlight in the site, how the definition of the region changes depending on who you're talking to and where and when. And that's one of the things we really hope to feature, the fluidity of the region, right? And I think, the gentleman mentioned, you've touched on something that's really close to my heart, because we have this idea that the national borders as they are today somehow define us. Right? And somehow, because there's a border around Singapore, we're different from the people just across the border in some very deep, essential way. Right? That on the island of Borneo, people on the east side are somehow very different from the people on the west side. It doesn't make any sense, right? But this is one of the forces that really shape how we think, how we see the world, and it would be something that I'd love to unpack through the work that we have up here on New Naratif. I think we're out of time. No, is it? Okay, well, one last question for our time. I love the ladies on there.
It's actually a follow-up to the question by the gentleman over there about the legal kind of structure of the company. Because now I'm wondering if not having a legal presence in Southeast Asia means that you're then going to be more open to being accused by governments in the region of being a foreign force or some such thing, and if your contributors will then be implicated as such.
I think journalists, do you want to answer that, or you should answer that?
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I don't think so. Because if you look at the stories that are being written in Singapore, they're by Singaporeans, and we want to feature the best and brightest talent from across the region, as I mentioned. So many of those people are going to be nationals of the countries they're writing in. And we're going to, I think, be very clear about, who is writing the stories. And I think we've been very clear about what our values are. If governments want to accuse us, I think our track record, once we slowly build up, we're publishing, it will speak for itself. I think the kind of stories we do will very much speak for itself. And at the end of the day, if they want to accuse us of all sorts of things, there's nothing much we can do, but they can't shut us down. And we are not accountable to the governments, we are accountable to our members. And that's the most important thing. If our members believe in us and have faith in us and trust that the work we are doing, that we are producing, is good, honest journalism, is good, honest research, then I think we're fine. Right? And that's why this whole structure exists, to make it very, very clear. We are accountable to our members. They're the ones who matter, they're the ones who participate. Yeah.
So the reason our legal presence in the UK is just to facilitate the ability to protect the project and the work from being shut down. But if you look at the team that has been behind New Naratif so far, we are all Southeast Asians. It's not like just because there's a legal presence in the UK, then it's actually British people driving. We are Southeast Asians. You can see it in the content, you can see it in the team. And it's also because our funding comes from members, then you cannot say we are foreign funded also. The funding comes from our members, so that's why I think if people want to accuse us of being foreign, they can say whatever they want, but our work will speak for itself.
Thanks, guys, and thank you for the questions. I think we'll just leave you with that, and this is the message that we hope to go out to the public. Judge us based on our content. All right. New Naratif is not personality-driven. The personalities that we have are amazing, but we are bigger than that, and we hope that what we give you is bigger than who we are. Right? So it's not important who the personalities are here. It's the work that we produce. So, and that's the message that we want to share with everybody. Judge us based on our content. And that's it. One more thing.
We're out of time basically, but you guys want to see one more thing? We have one article just finished today that I thought I'd like to premiere for all of you here.